Hello, everybody. We're going to start the session now. Hello, Jenny, and welcome to this event, another in our series of the UK Deaf Leadership Summit series, where we're highlighting leadership in the workplace and in the community. We have an inspirational speaker lined up for you today, and we're going to give you the opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question, please type into the Q&A box below, and we'll do our best to answer your question at the end of today's interview. As I mentioned, our speaker today is Jenny Lay-Flurrie, who has a very interesting life story to share with us. Jenny is the Chief Accessibility Officer for Microsoft based in the US. But what you might not know is that she's actually from the UK. As you can imagine, Jenny's really in high demand for interviews and to give talks about her work and inspiring leaders in organizations all around the world. So we're very grateful that she has been able to find time today to come and share her story with us here at the Deaf UK Leadership Summit. So on behalf of the organizers, I'm delighted to ask Jenny to start us off with a brief introduction.
So thank you for having me. I'm Jenny Lay-Flurrie. Sign name is JLF. I'm so thrilled and excited to be here today. My quick backstory, I grew up, born in Birmingham, grew up on the outskirts and suburbs going into Staffordshire. I went to ordinary school, hard of hearing aid wearer. My sister was born with deafness. She works for the NHS. My dad, a teacher. My mom, a teacher. My uncle, surrounded by people who are hard of hearing deaf. And it was just part of how we lived. There was nothing different, nothing odd about that. That was just our life. It was everyone else that was a little bit odd. Because we were watching this, we were using hearing aids, we squeaked a lot. And I really found my passion, which was music. I went to study music at Sheffield University. Then I came out, I got into IT, really to pay the rent, with my first job in London. And that really proceeded until, my gosh, 2005. So 2005, I ended up working for Microsoft to work on Hotmail. I don't know if anyone even sort of remembers Hotmail now, but that was my first job here at Microsoft now, almost 18 years ago. I also got into the deaf community here, and then it proceeded from there. And then 7 years ago, I became the CAO for Microsoft. And basically what that means is I work on the accessibility of everything that MS produces, whether that is a hiring process, a product, a service, a building. It's not just me. There's an army of amazing humans in the UK, all over the globe that work on that. And it is kind of the best job in the world, I think. I can, it's not easy, but I can definitely, I will have a great discussion with anyone who wants to have a comparison conversation on that. It's super fun, and we're able to push forward really the thinking about disability and accessibility.
Well, that's fantastic as introduction. Thank you so much, Jenny. So the first question I'd like to put to you is that on the Microsoft Story Lab back in 2014, I read through that your parents' mantra was that the only thing stopping you is you. And I think that's a really interesting mantra. And maybe you could explain to us the impact your parents had in shaping you growing up.
It's a great question. So yeah, I think the first thing to recognize is that there are a lot of things that stop people, and that especially stop deaf people. Lack of access, lack of interpreter, lack of closed captioning. You know, I don't want to minimize that in any way, shape, or form. Those are real, hard, very prevalent issues that impact the deaf community all around the world. So, you know, they weren't minimizing that. But there were times when, you know, I got in my own way for not advocating for myself, for not asking for what I needed to be, you know, successful, and for believing that there was a limit to what I could achieve. And I would say, I can't, you know, I can't do that. I can't. And they would say, you know, stop. No. You know, I think going to do music, a music school was a moment. And I know, you know, my dad actually really struggled with that one. He was like, and actually it was then the teachers who said, you've been saying she can do anything she wants to. If she wants to go and study clarinet, are you going to stand in her way? And that's when my dad had to kind of remember his own mantra. So I wouldn't say it's been easy, and I wouldn't say that I never want to minimize the blockades that can happen for the deaf, because they happen even today. I'm dealing with a lack of an interpreter for an event, a personal event later on for my kids' school. It still happens. But I do think being your own best self-advocate is just really important.
That's a really lovely explanation that you've given us. Thank you so much. And what would you say was your first sort of aspiration when you left school? What did you really want to achieve?
It's all about music. So yeah, I was all about, I think my big goal leaving school was to be a classical musician. And then I realized I really wasn't that good. Yeah, I mean, I got a good degree, but I was never going to be James Galway. So then it was, okay, music therapy. And that became my passion for a long time, and respite work, which I did a lot of. But it really was about music going through. And I think the good thing, candidly, is that I remained open to all possibilities. You know, and I can say that now, you know, going back 20 years, because my first job was at the Daily Mirror, my first proper job, not working behind the bar, which I did for Bass Brewery for a long time. But my first proper job was really working at Daily Mirror in Canary Wharf in London. It was a job I got to pay the rent, which in London was so much money. And I was working on an IT help desk, so technology, and well, I'd not used technology before, and so I just giggled my way through it. and it was taking calls, and I couldn't really take calls. I mean, I was still on analog hearing aids. You know, I couldn't use a mobile phone at the time, right? So it was hard, but it was just exciting and new, and then I found that I love the problem solving, and so then my next passion was IT.
That's quite a shift. I remember you talking about how in the past I've seen you talk about how you sort of covered up your deafness. And I guess this is quite a direct question as to why you felt you needed to cover up your deafness and what impact that had with music, as you've been talking about.
Yeah, well, as a kid, it started as a game, and the game was, you know, who could fool the audiologist better, me or my sister? You know, who could get the better audiogram? And I was really good at that, because I figured out that it was, you know, they would put the headphones on and I could watch and I could see when they were hitting the thing. So the true extent of my deafness was not really understood until I was well into my teens. So it started as a game. My sister always would be quite miffed with me because her audiogram would always be worse than mine. And I would get away with the little hearing aids and she had the big hearing aids, and then I'd throw mine in the washing machine. I think as we got older, that's when being outside of our house became very clear that being deaf in school was hard. It was easier to just read the books and not pay attention to the teacher and not ask for help. And then I would say going to music school, I learned a lot of really amazing skills, but not ones I would recommend. And the skills that I learned were to hide my disability, to hide my deafness, so that people would think, or rather not think, that I was bad at playing, because they would put deaf and music together and they would come up with an equation of badness. And so I honestly learned to cover and to hide. And I think I can, you know, I'm not the only one who's really good at that. You can look at people and guessing 30–40% of what they're saying through lip reading. I'm getting some things right, but my face is fairly expressionless. And you can move through it. But the only person that you're limiting is yourself. And so, yeah, it was my mid-20s. I was in a job and I was asked to manage a team based in France and Germany. And I can't use a mobile phone. And I said, no, I'm deaf and I can't do that. And they were like, you know, stop, time out. Got me to the government program, got me accommodations, got me training and education, got me digital hearing aids at the time. And that's when things really began to change, was my mid-20s. Yeah. So have I broken? We've got ASL, we got ASL, we've got BSL, because I've been here 16 years now, so forgive me, I'm just catching up. So broken through a glass ceiling.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Forgive me. The question is, deaf people often talk about encountering the glass ceiling. And can I ask, have you encountered a glass ceiling in your career? Forgive me, the interpreter, I had my Zoom on mute.
It was how, and I was trying to put the words together. We were catching some. Yes. I don't know anyone who hasn't hit a glass ceiling in any career discipline. But I think there are ceilings that I think I've put on myself. There are ceilings that others have put on me. You won't be able to, you can't do that, Jenny, you're deaf. I've also had ceilings within the deaf community, which is, you're not deaf enough to join a deaf club. I had that as a teenager, and I was like, wait, what? So I think glass ceilings exist. When you hit a glass ceiling, it's an emotional, like it's all the feels. You got to get through that process, and then you've got to logically tackle the ceiling. It's my learning, and smash it, because if you don't smash it, as hard as it may be, then others that come behind you will also hit the same ceiling, and that's honestly what keeps me grounded. Is get through the feels, because they're horrible. I'm not going to deny anyone stopping anyone doing anything is mean and horrible, and you have to go through that emotional process. But then you've got to logically tackle the ceiling and get on it. So yeah, we've smashed a few small ones, to be clear.
Yeah, no, that's a really lovely answer. Thank you very much. Let me ask you, what do you think of all of your achievements is your greatest so far?
Well, I don't know, because I'm still going, and I think there's an enormous amount still to do, like a huge amount to do. I watch, my family is still in the UK. I come home as long as the border is open. I will be home. This is my home, and it's incredible to see the work of so many with the BSL bill coming through. But it's one step on many still to go. And so that's not to say that I'm going to be I was not a part of that, to be very, very clear. But I think in terms of the future, there is an enormous amount still to do for deaf rights, the disability access, for our technology. But I am very proud of what we've been able to do with technology at Microsoft, with getting captioning across everything that we have. We just launched captioning into Windows just last week in the operating system. It's in Teams in multi-languages. It's free, it's there, and it's good. So I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of the teams and the culture that we have at Microsoft. And that's taken 15 years to really just grow and develop and just blossom over time. And I guess if there's any one thing that I personally feel proud of, it was starting the Disability Employee Group, which didn't exist when I came to Microsoft. There were 6 different groups. So blind group, ADD, there was a deaf community, but they weren't connected, you know, into one group that was then supporting one another and advocating for more access. I'm so proud that I was part of really, you know, just starting that, and getting those wheels in motion, and then going on to lead, you know, parts of that overall ecosystem, and putting disability and deafness on the radar, not just at Microsoft, but, you know, the needs of deaf people, the needs of disabled talent out there more vehemently. So yes, that one I'm proud of, and it was fun to visit the White House as a champion of change. That was kind of fun.
Clearly, you have achieved a lot, Jenny. And I think my next question is, do you feel that you truly understand the impact of these changes that you have made? The not only the internal but the external impact, not only to deaf but disabled communities? Is it possible to quantify the impact? It probably isn't. So I want to say a really big well done to you, because sometimes it must be hard to realize how much of an impact you've made, you and your team, of course. So I wanted to just say really a huge congratulations. Let me follow up and say, do you have any role models? Did you have any role models growing up?
So first, thank you. But it's not me, it's a team of people and a community of people that make change happen, right? So it's never one person, it's never one human. And I am proud to be part of that community. I am proud to call myself deaf and disabled, and a female leader. So, you know, one. Role models, yes, lots. My first role model was musician Evelyn Glennie. I went to a concert of hers when I was 8, and she allowed me to touch the stage while she was playing. She was playing on flower pots, and my mind was blown, because I could see, you know, I'd read, and you know, I could see that she was deaf, hard of hearing herself, and there she was at a stage in, I think, Wolverhampton, maybe, playing flower pots, and that was when I think I first believed that I could follow my music passion. I think other role models, you know, Marley Matlin, clearly, growing up, Children of a Lesser God was entirely in my growing up era, and I think Gallaudet, you know, University was also, that was going through its moment with Deaf Now, and I had pictures of that on my wall. In fact, I said this to Bobby Cordano, the president of Gallaudet, when I joined the board a few years ago, that I felt like I was, you know, living a childhood dream, being a part of that university. So yes, I had many, many, many heroes, still do.
That's a really nice answer, especially that last one about Gallaudet. So let me ask you, in your opinion, what makes a good leader? What would be your advice to other deaf and hard of hearing people taking on leadership roles? What would your advice be to them about the attributes needed?
That's another great question. I think it's really important to be yourself at all times. I'm curious by nature. I love to problem solve. I love to listen to the community. I love to meet people. The pandemic was hard for me because I like to I love to get out there and talk to people. But I think one is really being yourself. Two is when you hit the brick walls, the glass ceilings, when you hit people that do not understand, who are not inclusive, go through the process, acknowledge it, call it what it is. It could be you driving it. Most times it's not. Work through that logically, and where you can, bust through them. And third is to lean on others. Lean on others. I have an amazing group of mentors, leaders, friends who help me when I'm like, I don't understand why this happened. Can you help me to figure this out? And I think that as a deaf person, my journey it's changed. I grew up with mild loss, went into at 20 going to moderate loss. I now don't hear speech. I'm severe, profound loss. And my journey here has been joining the States has been to really learn sign language. And it's not my first language, but it's been a really important and eye-opening part of my own personal journey, because I've realized my battery power every day when I'm lip reading, when I'm trying to use captions only. My battery just drains really fast. When I sign, when I'm in a community that is inclusive of sign, there's no limit. And so I think always be open to the possibility. Doctors have told me over the years that my voice it's not going to continue. Well, it has. But still, from a communication perspective, sign is this beautiful, just empowering thing. So don't be scared of learning the new, I think is my other learning.
That's really lovely, actually. And when you talk about relying on others, and as part of your leadership, relying on other people as part of your team. So can I ask you, what would you make of the distinction between leadership and management? How would you define those differently?
Leadership and management. Oh, great. You have got great questions, Lyndon. Leadership is charting the path. I think of leadership as setting a direction, of figuring out where you want to be in 1 year, in 2 years, in what are the directions that you need to go down? What are the things that you need to move away from? What is that clear list of areas that you want to invest in and partner with others to move forward on? To collaborate on, because I love collaborating. I think collaborating expands your impact. It breaks through some of the big glass ceilings that have existed for decades. No one person can do it on their own. Management is, and I think mostly about people management, and I have an amazing team of people that I work with every day. And management is the day-to-day process of, Microsoft calls it model, coach, and care. And I think that's a beautiful principle to management, which is, how do you model yourself? How do you help and coach others? And how do you care for them as humans? And we all not. Am I great at that every day? No, but that really does. I think that's it's sort of a beautiful principle that I think is very important to management.
I think that's an excellent response to what is a difficult question. So thank you, Jenny. You are one of the few corporate teams that actually has, Microsoft that is, that actually has the title of a Chief Accessibility Officer. So what do you think other corporate entities can do to improve accessibility across the board? Is it about having more titles like yours in other corporations, or is it more than that?
So there are a lot more people in accessibility that have leadership roles. So the first thing to know is, while there's a small but growing community of people that have the CAO position, there is a growing community of people that have leadership roles in accessibility. And so my peers at Google and Apple and incredible leaders that I look up to, that are doing the work there. But there is clearly a big opportunity to grow the number of people in the accessibility community. I love that one of the new leaders at T-Mobile is Claudia Gordon, who is another amazing deaf leader, and she's doing incredible work already. And I also love that LinkedIn has now added a number of accessibility roles. So when you're looking for positions, you can add that you are looking for an accessibility job. You're looking for a CAO position. You're looking for a developer, an engineer role, or a tester, or an advocate. So I think the industry is moving forward. I always want it to be quicker than it is. And we saw an incredible increase in the number of accessibility jobs. I think it was 78%. The growth in just 1 year. So the industry they need more people in accessibility arena, and I think it's our job to help encourage people to join this as a role, a discipline, a profession.
Well, that's really positive. 78% inside 12 months. That's really, really positive.
Right.
So let me ask you, I guess, an inevitable follow-up question. What would you say then? This is growing 78%. What would you say to those organizations that aren't doing this yet are the benefits of doing this with their IT infrastructure and their products?
The short answer is, where are you? The bottom line is that accessibility is about inclusion of people with who are deaf and disabled. If you don't have accessibility in your company, then you are excluding people, because your stuff will be inaccessible. And that is just the blunt, honest reality. Why would you exclude people? And secondly, why would you really lose out on the innovation opportunity to make you, your processes, your company better, to open doors to deaf disabled talent, to by looking at hiring processes, in technology, to make sure that your technology, you know, some of the great nerdery that we've been able to work on came out of designing for people with disabilities, but open doors for everyone. I was just seeing this morning on Twitter, just some of the, I love the new captioning feature. I can finally follow what so-and-so is saying. They're not deaf, but they're using accessibility features. As we know, captioning has that potential. We also know from history, door handles and magnetic zips and fluorescent light, that all came from designing through disability. Some of the best innovations have come from that. So yeah, it's not a nice to do. It needs to be a strategic imperative in your company. And it's not hard to get into. I think that's one of the fallacies. Is that, you know, I can't, it's too hard. It's not. It's not. But you have to start. You have to start.
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember reading somewhere that actually you've got to start from scratch, yes, but actually it should be the default. So whenever you're lining up a new product or a new launch or a new service, actually right at that initial drawing board phase, you should be thinking about accessibility, not trying to bolt it on later. That's actually where it's difficult. So I just thought I'd share that. So we've actually received, I'm going to move us on now to some really interesting questions that we've received from the audience. So let me share some of those with you. I've got about 4 or 5 here in front of me. So the first question I want to share is, how do you handle difficult people?
Everyone's easy to work with, right? I think in any role, in any position, I think it's important to stay grounded to the importance of listening and working with others, right? If you stay in your bubble, then you will not expand your lens on the world. Constantly remind people that I have bias that comes from how I lived, how I grew up. I'm not, I didn't, you know, sign language is not it's not my first language. You know, when people ask me for deaf perspectives, I'm always the first to say, well, let's go get some. So it's really important that you spend time and you invest your time listening to people, and you bring that insight in, right? Whether it's, you know, you're working on a new team or you're looking at a company, you know, in order to figure out, should I work for that company, you need to understand, are they going to be the right place for me? Is it the right culture for me? The only way you can do that is to, so you've got to stay grounded. It's important to listen, to engage. And sometimes the toughest conversations that I've had have been the best. Because people come across as, you know, I hate the word difficult, but they can be hard conversations because they're having a terrible time with technology. Or they've hit a ceiling and they're frustrated. And so I think the most important thing is to say, okay, I'm picking up on something here. Take a breath, pause, listen. And sometimes in that moment, it's the right thing to help and to you start to pull together and see how you can move it forward, sometimes it's right to stop and say, hold, this is raw. It's important, and I want to make sure we do this right. So I think it really depends on the situation, but I'm always grounded to the criticality of it. And that some of my best, honestly, some of my best conversations, some of the best forums that I've been a part of have been the small and the hard ones, because you learn the most.
Well, I actually think that's a really valuable learning point for us there. That's an excellent answer. And I wonder, actually, let me follow straight on to the next question. Would you say it's true that accessibility is a question that will never be answered, that it's always just going to evolve? Do you think that's true as a premise?
I totally do. The reality is that there's inequity in the system. I'm sitting here, I've got my day at work, and then tonight I go to my school, one of my kiddos' school for curriculum night. It's very exciting. I've requested interpreters, they haven't been able to find. I know that I'm going in at less than, in terms of understanding, the curriculum. It happens, right? By the way, I requested 2 weeks ago. That's inequity. That's inequity. Accessibility can help there. I've asked them to turn captioning on everything. Now I know that I'm not going to be able to understand the teachers when they want to talk to me. But I'm ready because I've got my app, Group Transcribe, which is the Microsoft translation app. And I'm going to use that tonight when people want to talk to me. So I'm ready. It can help to fill the gap, but it's still not equity. Equity is being able to independently go to that evening and be able to understand, to communicate, to engage, and be a full member parent in that situation without having to think about accessibility and my needs. They're just automatically enabled. So in the last 25 years, I've seen a lot of change. Working in the Daily Mirror 25 years ago, I was told that captioning was nearly here. When I was like, I can't use a phone. Well, that didn't happen, but it's here now. The next stage then is to bust through the next technology barrier, right? And that is equity in how do we solve this challenge of supply and demand and interpretation. I don't know what the part that technology has there yet, but it's a barrier. And I think that's what we've got to do, is bust through barriers. The inequity for people who are deaf and disabled has existed for 30+ years, probably hundreds of years. We're not going to solve it in 5 years. We're not going to solve it in 10. But we have to keep moving forward.
Okay, so I have another question here. So this is from somebody in the audience. And it says, sorry, I'm just asked, I had a bit of a glitch there. So this question says, somebody in my company says that we should be focusing on profitability rather than accessibility. do you think that's really a trade-off?
Yeah, they're the same thing. So they're missing out. The reality is that by embedding it, let me look at Microsoft Teams for a second. Now, there's still more that we need to do with Microsoft Teams. It's far from perfect. But captioning is in by default. Transcription is in by default. Hand raise, which was designed by a neurodiverse engineer, is in. We've also got a bunch of features that empower screen reader users, so blind and low vision community. I could go on and on and on. They're in Microsoft Teams. They're just included as part of the product. It makes that product richer. It makes that product attractive to the entirety of people who want to purchase it. All of those features are free. They're just part of the gig. We've also got products like our stickers that are just for these are Microsoft Surface Adaptive Kit. These are just for blind and mobility, and they go on your keyboard, and they just help you to identify the sort of lanyard holders, and they're little tactile bumps that go on your keyboards, and there's special magic glue that go on your laptop. And it means that if I'm blind, I can get to the key that I want because they're tactile bumps. We've also found people putting them on microwaves. If I'm mobility and I'm trying to pull my laptop out of my bag, I can attach it to a lanyard and just pull it out if I have cerebral palsy. We're not doing this because it's a nice to do. We're doing this because of the value that people with disabilities have as humans, and also they have buying power, right? So there's real needs here. So yes, this is a business. We work as a business. Now, there's a responsibility we have as a technology player, but we're not in the game of creating products like this just for altruistic reasons. So you're missing out on beautiful innovation and the opportunity to really empower and include all of your customers if you're not focusing on accessibility.
That's a really, really interesting answer. So I think we've got two more questions, and I've got half an eye now on time, Jenny. We are coming towards our hour mark. So you work at Microsoft, clearly, and we've had a question from the audience which asks, what are the leadership challenges that you have faced at Microsoft? How do you feel the senior leadership view you as a deaf person? And do you feel that this is really, do they view you as somebody who's raised the bar as a deaf person? Interesting questions.
I hope so. I hope so. The one thing I will say, I feel very fortunate to work in a company that is so inclusive of disability, of deafness, of accessibility. That starts with my boss, who's amazing. It extends to my skip level, who's Mr. Brad Smith, the president, vice chair of the company, who really was the genesis of the department that I run now as it stands 7 years ago. And it also extends to our CEO and the entirety of his leadership team. In fact, our CEO was executive sponsor of the disability ERG that I built with the help of many and chaired for 10 years before coming into this role. So there is empathy, there is understanding. If there are blockers, we break them down. And that's why you've seen in Microsoft over the years, just an increase in the bar of accessibility that we have in our technology, in our websites, in our buildings, in our events. You see sign language on all of our events now. We have audio descriptions in our events, that's rolling out. We have captioning clearly in multi-language. So, we're in a company that gets it. Now I know that that's taken time and education and openness and curiosity. And that's what I look for in the companies that I now work with. And what I advise on is to be open, to be curious, to allow your employee community to have a voice, to tell you what's not working, to tell you what's broke, to tell you what they need. And so, yes, I do feel like, this, I feel very proud of really the culture that we have here. And also not perfect, right? We definitely continue to learn.
I can imagine that employees must really love working at Microsoft, having such an inclusive, empowering environment. I can say you're selling it well to me too. So it sounds wonderful. I think we're down to the last question now. We're 5 to the hour. So this person says, I'm the chair of the disabled working group at my organization, and we try to make sure that our voice is heard, but we find that challenging. Do you have any ideas how we might try and change that?
It's a great question, and I've lived that. We've not always been here, and again, we're far from perfect. But I would say if I go back a decade, when I was chair of the disability group, there was a lot of frustration at the things we know were needed. In fact, the first thing that we tackled here was lack of captioning. And this is maybe 14 years ago. And we had a company meeting in a baseball field, which is kind of like a football field, but bigger in some ways and smaller in others. Very small pitch. The acoustics were terrible. And no one could understand what particularly the deaf, hard of hearing community, we couldn't understand what people were saying at the front. So we would go to be with our team and we would eat and then we'd leave. I was like, that's not okay. We need to be included. So we built a proposal to add captioning. We figured out what it would cost. I asked people, I put the business case together. They were like, no. Next year, scratched record. I went again. I was like, oh. I got support from really the head of Adair people at the time. So our chief people officer, she says, I don't know if this will work because it meant changing the whole event architecture. But we've got to try it. I can't have people who don't understand what's being said here. It's a really important time, and it's an important investment for the company of your time, and I don't want it to be wasted. That's now the standard today, right? So I would say there's persistence, there's prioritization, there's getting a really good, clear business case. And I'm a really good professional complainer. Not being scared to send emails to senior leaders. Never be scared to hit the send button, because you never know what you'll get back. It might be nothing, it might be something. You only need one person to say yes, and you can move forward. But I also know how hard that job is, so I have empathy for where you are, and I always say keep going.
Okay, well, I'm sad to say in many ways that brings us to the end of our hour. What a wonderful conversation we've had with you, Jenny. It's flown by. Once again, thank you so much for giving up your time. Jenny, sorry, did you have something you wanted to say?
You're amazing. Thank you for just being a great moderator. And it's been an honor to meet you too.
Well, thank you, Jenny. So all that's really left for me to do is to say that we have another webinar taking place next month. So I really hope that our audience will like to tune back in next month. Thank you, Jenny. And it's goodbye from us. Thank you to the interpreters as well. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.